Hello, and welcome back to the Let Him Find You Summit. We are smart, successful women getting pursued and cherished by extraordinary men. I'm Bex Burton, your host, and today I am thrilled to welcome to our interview table Caroline Andrews. Caroline is super fascinating. I'm really excited about our conversation today. I'm going to share a little bit with you about her. She has over 20 years dedicated to the study of spirituality, relationships, yoga, and personal development. And she's found the keys to pleasure for women, not only just women in their health and relationships, but especially women over 40. She's inspired by her real life issues with relationships, addictions, and she's constantly sought healing and found peace, clarity, and answers in the most unlikely places. She's spent her life teaching, instructing, and coaching women to be fully empowered, take full ownership of their lives, create amazing relationships with themselves and others, and use pleasure to power all aspects of who they are and what they want in her signature programs. Caroline, it is with great pleasure. Thank you so much for being with us today.
Thank you. I'm thrilled to be here with you.
Yes. Excellent. So Caroline, let's dive in and start with this idea of pleasure, because I know that for a lot of smart, successful women, we are pounding away in our masculine and trying to do it right and be successful and accomplish all of the things. And a lot of times what slips away or falls through the cracks is our femininity, our feminine energy, our feminine power, grace, and some of that is linked with our relationship with pleasure. Would you speak into a little bit of the power of pleasure and how important it is for us as women?
Yes, thank you, Bex. It's actually one of my favorite topics, as you know. And what I find that, pleasure is our birthright, right? And we as women have the ability to receive and experience an infinite amount of pleasure. It's how do we do that? Where do we tap in to experience that? So what I tell women and men too is make it a point to experience pleasure. It can be anywhere in your life pleasure. It can be sensual pleasure. It can be the pleasure of a beautiful sunset. It can be the pleasure of a rose. Whatever it is that gets you in that vibration of feeling that bliss, that joy, that connection to life is what's going to bring you the man or the woman vibrating at that higher level of pleasure. So just helping women remember how to tap into that on a daily basis.
Yeah. Talk to us a little bit. I love what you're speaking about, and I'm certainly vibrating with it. And I would love for you to share a little bit more about that pleasure, that bliss, that vibrational state that you're talking about. Just unpack that a little bit more for us.
Yeah. So how do we get there? What do we do to experience pleasure more so on a daily basis? So what I tell women is beautify your environment. Get fresh flowers to put around you to remind you of how beautifully you're connected to nature. Get a little piece of delicious organic chocolate and really get your senses. You take the moment and consciously breathe, so take the chocolate, smell it, let it really get into your senses, and breathe into your body. So again, getting women to embody the divine feminine, because we're so busy, we're running to do a million things or taking care of children, and just getting into embracing your divinity as a female by taking that time, taking a few breaths, doing a little meditation, eating that organic chocolate, looking at a rose, dressing yourself so you feel good and beautiful. Just those little things that we can do easily in our busy day that will bring us to that higher vibration of pleasure, which again is that energy to attract that what you desire in all areas of your life.
Yeah. What I love so much about what you're saying is, because we could hear these things from sort of a surface level and be like, oh, well, buy the flowers and wear the dress. And, but it's not, what I love about what you're saying is that that's not for them, it's not, for the men, it's not, and it's not even a strategy or tactical, but what you're offering, what you're suggesting is really a key, like to unlock our own feminine feelings. And
Got
like,
it.
yeah, like I know for me, like having flowers in the house, just like you said, like really connects me with the beauty that is nature. One of the other things that I love that you were sharing is to smell the flowers, to taste the chocolate. And what I'm hearing is that our sensory input is really powerful in tapping into pleasure and femininity.
Yes, no, you're exactly right. And the other thing is, when we move from our masculine energy, which is the producing and moving forward and creating, into our feminine, we slow down. We start to really embody our feminine, which is slower, which isn't at this fast pace. We even start to talk slower. And we really start to feel the, like, what does it mean to be, an embodiment of the divine feminine? And I literally had to teach myself first and my clients just to breathe, to even do that 2-minute meditation where you're grounded and you're connected to the earth and you feel, much deeper than you do when you're in your masculine. So even getting into that connection of being in your feminine, which, by the way, I was in a masculine world most of my life, it took time. It took time to learn how to magnetize things, how to receive, how to be in flow. When you've been in a masculine world, which is what we're taught, our entire life, now to slow down and ground and let it come to you, what a beautiful experience. Especially as we get into, the middle age time where we're really getting into our wisdom. We've had enough experiences where, whoa, slow down and breathe, right? And it really is stop and smell the roses.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
love that. And even as you're sharing, like I can feel like my whole energetic system just kind of like come down a little bit. And like, you mentioned a 2-minute meditation that connects us with the earth. Like, I mean, I'm imagining what that might be like. If one of our audience members is really fascinated by this or would like to take this on, like what would be the benefit of that?
The benefit of that is you would be more in the present moment. So when we stop and we focus on our breathing, say if we're doing 2-minute breathing meditation, we come into our bodies fully. Whereas when we're in the thinking mind, right, we can actually almost leave our body consciously. So when a woman, the more she drops down into her essence, right, her divinity, her femininity, she can be more fully present with whomever she's with. And that alone will bring people to you when they really realize you are there to be fully present for them and hear them, right? I mean, that's part of the battle with relationships and communications is we don't feel heard.
Mm-hmm.
So when a woman can come more in her feminine and be fully present, that's when the beauty can begin. So that 2-minute meditation will just ground her and root her in her divine feminine.
Yeah, what I love about that is that it's 2 minutes is so accessible, and it's really great practice for when we are in communication or engaging with a new person in our life to dial down the noise and really drop in as you're suggesting. I really love that.
Thank you.
Caroline, talk to us about what you see in the women that you work with, perhaps when they, at the onset of the work that you do with them, when they might be really functioning from upstairs, in their headspace. What do you see? What are some of the symptoms that we're looking for when a woman is operating in her head or disconnected from her pleasure? Or, if a woman in our audience is just simply not aware that this is where she is, what are some of the things that she's looking for that these practices can support her with?
Yeah. Well, I want to make sure I answer you correctly. So one thing that I want to state is when a woman isn't aware, of her divine feminine, when she's more in her masculine, a lot of women can be experiencing extreme anxiety. They're just anxious all the time. They're not able to have, and this is my other thing about pleasure, they're not able to experience orgasm, which to me and the work I do, that's huge in the release that we need and the pleasure that can bring. Because they're not able to relax. And again, they're not able to drop into their bodies and fully feel, or they may be carrying some, sexual shame of some sort that's blocking them from their creativity, from their passion, from the relationships that they're seeking, because they're just not aware. They're not aware that even sexual shame is in their auric field or in their sacral chakra needing to be healed or expressed. But really,
Yeah.
obviously from a history of what's gone on in their life, I take them through that process of seeing maybe this is blocking you. How can we release that? What can you do for yourself to start to open that flow again?
Yeah. Wow. That's really powerful work. I mean, and so what I'm hearing is, when women are experiencing a lot of anxiety, when we're not feeling connected in our relationships, not feeling intimate, and not being able to really connect in the physical act of sexual intercourse, not being able to let go, not being able to release, experience orgasm. And you mentioned sexual shame, and for the women in our audience, would you just kind of discuss that a little bit? Because some women are like, oh, I totally understand what that is. I had a traumatic experience when I was a child. For other women, they might feel blocked in this area, but they may not fully understand what's going on there. Would you speak into would you speak into sexual shame for a moment?
Yeah. So sexual shame, and unfortunately, all women have experienced it to some degree just because we're women. It's by the nature of who we are. And what that is I always like to say, like, when you experience guilt, that's like, I did something wrong. Sexual shame is, I am wrong. Somehow, somewhere, the programming got, put in the subconscious mind that I'm not worthy, or I've done something that I'm, ashamed of, and culturally, I may not be accepted. And of course, it's a personal thing that I experience, and I had no idea that carrying this sexual shame, which the blockage is in the sacral chakra, could have me, not functioning at full capacity. In other words, not doing what I came here to do because I'm still feeling small. I'm still feeling not worthy. I'm still feeling not enough, all because of sexual shame that I was carrying in my body. So once I was able to address it and look at it like, oh, this really impacted me at a deep, deep level, then I can unravel it. And of course, it has a lot to do with programming, limiting beliefs from, 0 to 7 or 10 that sometimes we're not even aware of, that's keeping us small. So once we can unpack that, or just look at, where is this coming from? Was it something that happened to me as a little girl, or my upbringing, religion, rape? There's so many things that we can be carrying that I wasn't aware it was impacting me to that level. And once I really cleared that, it made me think, like, how many other women are carrying this shame around and they don't even know how it's impacting them.
Right.
So that's my really big thing. And again, I address it with doing, self-pleasuring. That's a huge self-care ritual that I have all my women do in a very, very loving, nurturing way to themselves.
And I want to hear more about that, but I
Yeah.
want to just go back and reiterate for the women in our audience. I really want this to land, and correct me if I'm not hearing correctly, but what I'm hearing is that sexual shame can be rooted at a very early age from something like on a grand scale, like trauma or inappropriate touching, or just culturally in like a family environment, or from religion, or from something that a parent said. I mean, it doesn't necessarily have to be like, there's, what I'm hearing is that sexual shame, the root of it is can be on from a broad spectrum.
Yes,
Yeah.
absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah. And that's, I mean, for me, that really like puts a lot of context to like my own relationship with sex. And I think that that's really helpful for the women in our audience. I want to hear more about the self-pleasuring, and, you know, because a lot of women will have like some shame probably come up around that. So what, first of all, how do you create that bridge between the shame that women are experiencing and inviting them to, you know, be the loving, compassionate, pleasurable touch for themselves that opens up that path for others to come in as well?
Yeah, beautiful. Yeah. So Bex, what I like to do is teach them how to create the environment that they need to be in, where they feel safe so they can self-pleasure themselves. So I'm always saying, like, find a space, you know, in your room, wherever you can go, where you can make it, again, it's that beautify it. Get yourself flowers, essential oils, maybe a little organic chocolate, whatever's going to make you feel good about you. And then we're going to find whatever toys that maybe we want to use or we don't need to use, or your hand, have some nice lubricant. And literally, there's a couple of different things. One of the things I do, I actually have them do in front of a mirror.
Wow.
Really, and remember, you make that eye contact with yourself, sending yourself that loving, you know, I love you, I embrace you, I accept you, while they're self-pleasuring. Super healing. If they don't have a mirror, then they just create that beautiful, like, it's almost like a womb, so to speak, of safety. And, you know, it takes time. It's a, you know, I'll start out maybe 10 minutes, 15, 20 minutes, whatever, just making that connection. Because you know what? If you don't know what you like in pleasure, you're going to have a hard time teaching someone else. And men and, you know, men and women, they need to be taught what you like. Women, we're all wired differently. What feels good to one woman does not feel the same to the other. So getting in tune with your body and understanding what pleasures you. How, you know, how can that be a bad thing? And again, it's getting women used to thinking it was okay. This was really hard for me at first. I'm like, a man's supposed to do that for me. Well, guess what? Not really. You know, you need to do that for you, so that, and it's, again, it's a form of healing any of that sexual shame as well.
Yeah. This
Really
is
important, creating that environment and seeking that love from yourself.
It's super powerful. I mean, and that really brings, you know, the idea of like, you have to love yourself before you can love anybody else. It really brings it to a new depth and level. It really does. And I'm curious what you see, what you witness women going through this process. How does that transform the way they show up in the world, the way they are radiant magnetic? Because, you know, we're talking about this idea of letting him find us. But if we're, you know, if we're really blocked and I don't want to say hiding, but it's almost like we're trapped under this sexual shame, it's really preventing us from really being seen. So talk to us about some of the transformation, or what you see in the women that you work with.
Absolutely. Now, one funny thing we say is the way you show up in the bedroom is the way you show up in your life. So think about that.
Wow.
I know, isn't that wild? I'm like, whoa,
big.
are you fully self-expressed? So in other words, when we start doing this work, you know, are you congruent? In other words, on a scale of 1 to 10, you're in the bedroom, by sound, movement, and breath, can I tell you're at a 1 or an 8? We're so programmed, we don't even realize how uncongruent you are when you go from a 1 to an 8 and there's no change in body, sound, or movement. So I really help women feel like how does this pleasure feel? Do you like light touch? I mean, what are you doing so that they get out of their heads and into their bodies? When you're able to do that and you become what I call a self-expressed woman, where everything that's going on internally is being expressed externally, men find you. I mean, because you are fully alive in your divinity. And it's really beautiful to witness women. I've seen women that have been holding back, not doing their life purpose, not finding their man, not having abundance. When they get real and authentic with their passion and their purpose and become expressed, they bring it all in. Mm. You're a magnet. People are drawn to you when you are fully self-expressed. That's what I mean. Major changes in women's lives when they fully embrace their power.
Yeah.
And just step into that priestess that they are.
I love it. That is so powerful. And from our conversations, I know that getting really clear on women's desires and what we want is part of that process. And one of the things that you and I have talked about is the eternal list that women are invited to create about the qualities that they desire in their ultimate partner. And you have some tips that you can offer our listeners on best practices for this list. What comes up for you around this idea of like creating this desire list, and what can you share with our audience to help them identify these desires?
Great. Thank you, Bex. That's, again, one of my favorite areas. I did that myself. I created what I called, my man is coming list. And what I tell women is get really specific on what it is you want in your partner. I mean, all areas. Like I mentioned, I want him to be financially extremely successful. I want him to love what he's doing and know his life purpose. And remember, this all is mirrors where you have to be at that same vibration. Talk about if it's important to you for them to be spiritual. Do they need to be a humble man? How do they feel about having a family, if that's where you are? Or do you already, again, this could be older women. If you have children, how will they interact with your children? I mean, I was so clear that I wanted that person to, respect my children, but, not tell me what to do. What about sensuality? Do you want them to be sensual? Do you want them to be sexual? Do you want them to be fit? All of those things. What do you want to do with him when you have that free time with him? Do you want, so just get so clear. Mine was 3 pages long.
Yeah.
I didn't want to leave anything out because I know how the universe works. And so what do you want to do? Your lifestyle. Do you want to travel? Are you homebodies? Do you want to prepare food together? Do you, is he a humanitarian? Does he love animals? I mean, get so specific that there's no areas. Does he like to shop, with you? Or just, does he want to buy, is he going to buy you nice things? Or do you visualize yourself living together or living separately? A lot of women my age now don't need to do the marriage thing again. They've done it already. They like having their independence, yet having that committed, monogamous relationship. So just don't leave any details out. It's probably the most fun you can have when you're writing your list and you're getting super clear on who and what it is you want to attract.
Yeah, I love it. And I love like the very, like the big picture concepts that you're talking about: lifestyle, fitness, interests, vision for our life. One of the things that comes up though when I'm speaking with my community is, well, what about his eye color, or what about his height? Like those kind of like details about what he looks like and what kind of work he's doing. Like, what is your take on like women who are like, well, I don't want a man with a comb over, like what, is there a line as far as specificity? And what's your take on like these like minutia of the physicality?
That's a great question. And it's funny because for me, and it was just based on my own personal experience, I left those super detailed things about the physicality to the universe. I said I want him to be a handsome, distinguished gentleman. I didn't go into descriptions. And I'm not saying that you can't do that if you really have hangups about that. But to me, that wasn't as important as those certain qualities that I wanted them to have for it. Because guess what? Our looks, as we age, everything's going to change. So, and I used to be very specific on what type of body type I wanted, and I ended up dating a man who blew all that out of the water. I never thought I could be attracted to this or this, and he changed that for me. So I said, you know what? I'm not going to put those limits. Now, naturally, there'll be chemistry and whether you're attracted or not, but I try to have the women not be quite as specific with eye color, hair color. Like, let the universe bring that to you.
Yeah, because ultimately those aren't going to be the things that make or break a conversation or a discussion or, yeah. And ultimately those aren't going to be the things that make or break the attraction either.
You got it. Yeah.
And when we're talking about calling in from the universe and the divine, there's always the holding the vision with an open hand, this or something better,
Exactly.
And yeah.
Right on.
Awesome.
You get that.
Because how are we really, more knowledgeable and more informed than the higher power, the source energy that is responsible for bringing us together?
Absolutely. You got it. Yeah.
Awesome. Caroline, this is so informative and super helpful for so many women in our audience. I'm learning a whole lot myself. I feel like I want to keep going, but I do want to be good to our time and the time of our audience. And so I know that you have a wonderful gift for our audience to partake in. Would you share with us what that is?
Yes, absolutely. So because I'm so passionate about pleasure, I have a survey that they can take. If they go to yourpleasurefactor.com, take the little survey, and it'll actually rate them and tell them where they are on their scale of pleasure and how they might be able to make that a little better.
Excellent. Yes. More pleasure opening the doorway for our man to find us in our life. I love it. What a beautiful gift.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Caroline. It's been such a pleasure speaking with you, and we'll hook that free gift up under Caroline's interview. Be sure to catch that. And thank you again so much for being with us today.
Thank you too. And again, I really love the work you're doing, and so much success to this summit.
Thank you. Thank you so much. We'll see you next time on the Let Him Find You Summit.
Take care.